I'm really excited to bring up our next speaker. Get ready to kind of laugh and cry and everything in between, because I don't know if I've ever seen a better speaker in my life. This guy is a pro, but let me just get right to it. Father Leo Patalinghug is a priest of Voluntas Dei and the founder of Plating Grace. Many of you may have seen on social media, or EWTN, an international movement that brings food and faith together. A best-selling author, speaker, host on the EWTN and YouTube, he inspires families to grow closer to God and one another around the table. A former chef, martial artist, Food Network champion, where he beat Bobby Flay, the throwdown with Bobby Flay. That's right. Father Leo, he's also a great singer. Like, amazing. The guy's got just more talents than we could possibly imagine. So, Father Leo shares the joy of seeing food as a gift from God and what nourishes both body and soul. He was here at the Marian conference where it was like 90% women. I'm like, the guys have to hear this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a warm Quincy welcome for Father Leo Patalinghug.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Does this microphone make me sound taller? Is that a yes? Confessions will be heard for Lion. I just want to say, John's invitation about just coming to that July 11th and just learning more about what he does, it is absolutely necessary. I find that whenever I meet people like that, I feel close to them because we're brothers. Could you tell the similarities between him and I? And we are brothers because of something that you're going to be participating in at the end of this day. Whether you want to admit it or not, if you are in the Catholic Church, I do not care what the Olive Garden says. It's our line. You are family. Because when you receive his body, blood, soul, and divinity, you literally have his blood running through your veins. We are family because of this food. And because of this food, we have a special mission to become what we eat. And if we become what we eat, then you are no longer just a guy in the pew. You are a man of God. You are the hands and feet of Jesus. And I, as an ordained priest, have a great responsibility, not only to give you that food, but to give what I have received. I have to show you the face of God. And I know what you're thinking. I didn't know he was Filipino. Because he's not. He's not. My job today is to help you stay awake. Because I know that this is the best time to give a talk, right after lunch, when food turns either into sleep or air, okay? So my job is to do one thing, and that is to make sure that I am not boring. Because when people sometimes think of the church, they see a priest, automatic, boring. Anyone here think the church is boring? Raise your, yeah. Confessions are available on this side of the, boring is part of life. And we need to be content with the fact that we don't need to be stimulated all the time. Some people might think that what is happening over there in that little chapel called the Adoration Room is boring. Because you're just sitting there. I mean, there's no fancy lights or nothing. We have to be content with just being who we are, where we are at the present moment. In fact, I was teaching catechism to a bunch of kids, and I was talking about how heaven, which is kind of where I think you all want to go, right? And anyone here, who wants to get to heaven? Raise your hand. Okay, great. How many of you are going to become saints? Raise your hand. Okay. Awkward. The only people who get to heaven are saints. And saints are always content in good times and in bad, whether they're having a great day or a bad day. And when they are content in holiness, they can experience the beatific vision. And I was trying to explain the beatific vision with a bunch of grade school kids, and they're like, well, what is heaven like? And beatific vision is when you look at God, and God looks at you for all eternity. And this kid in the back raised his hand and he said, that sounds boring. Because it would be boring. So let me give you a definition of boring. Boring is answering a question that no one is asking. It's ironic, isn't it? But it's true. If I were to come up here and talk about geophysics, you might be bored unless you're a nerd. And if there are any geophysicists here, you're kind of nerdy. But you would get into this talk because that's what you came. No. You didn't come here to learn about geophysics or anything else. You came because you want to become a saint. Sadly, our understanding of saint is kind of vanilla. When I give talks, especially at young gatherings, youth groups, I will bring a bunch of people up onto the stage and I will say, now on the count of 3, strike a pose and show us what a saint looks like. And the things that these kids do, I mean, the number one thing that I get is this. I had one guy do this. And I said, okay, what is that? He goes, it's my halo. That's what he said. Then you get people going like this. Because that's what you see. And if that is your understanding of holiness, trust me, that's not holiness. That is drugs. Okay? If you were to walk around going like this, honestly, there are groups of people who would love you at their protests, okay? So I think what we have to do is understand what holiness means, and it's really not an easy thing because holiness is not as much of a noun as it is a verb. You have to be sancire, it's the verb, where we get the word sanctus. And the verb sancire means to cut, to tear apart, to separate from that which is not holy. But you live in the world, and therefore you can't necessarily just pick up and leave. I mean, look, if the world could be a man cave, then yeah, you could all become a saint. But you can't. You can't just simply flee to that place where you can be you. No. You've got to be you in the midst of the world. And so as I do a lot of conferences, and I remember the first conference, and you're going to be getting some of that information from my very first conference that I gave to men's conference years ago. I've been a priest now for 26 years. Most of it has been spent as a professional chef. I'm the host and founder of an international faith and food movement called Patalinghug.com. And in this movement, I try to bring families back around the dinner table because that's where you experience holiness, at the Lord's table and at the domestic church's table, your altar. And guess what? Who picked up on this the most? Women, because they love cooking. Because I have a cooking show on TV, Sundays at 4:30 Eastern, check your local listing, and on EWTN. And that all came about simply because you heard from Mark that several years ago I was on the Food Network and I beat Bobby Flay in a competition. All right, and people ask, like, seriously, how did you do that? I cheated, okay? I put holy water in the marinade, okay? That's what I did. I didn't do that. I just tell you, I just beat him because my recipe was better than his. That's all it was. But because of that, now I'm out traveling, doing talks and lectures and leading tours and all this stuff because of food. And what's funny is that when people heard about this, the women picked up on it immediately because you know that the majority of the cooking is done at the home level by women. But can I tell you something? When I started doing this, I got an email from this guy, and he's like, I am from Nigeria. I saw your website, By the way, it's a terrible Nigerian accent, but deal with it. I ain't Nigerian, okay? But he says, I saw your website about you cooking, and I thought it was a joke because in my country, if the men enter into the kitchen, the wife will kick him out, the children will laugh at him, and the villagers will shame him. That's what he said. And he said, but after reading your information, I will cook for my family and I will brave the shame of the villagers so that I can provide for my children. And I'm like, you got all that from my website? I was giving recipes, you know? But he got the point. And here it is. If you do not feed your family, then the devil will. And you heard Deacon talking about that earlier today. Oh, no, you heard Deacon yelling at you about that earlier today. The devil is a master chef. The devil has a way of making bad things look good. Lies into a feast. And what do we do with our Catholic faith? We have the beauty of truth. We have the fullness of truth, and we make that look like leftovers 3 days ago. Nobody wants what we're serving, maybe because we are not platinggrace.com very well. So my job is to get you to think about how you present your Christian message to the world, because you are serving something up, and I don't know if it tastes good or if it leaves a bitter taste in their mouth, or if what you are offering to this world makes them hungry for more. I think it was the movie When Harry Met Sally, and, you know, Sally is kind of like in the restaurant. There's a movie with a restaurant, or it might be Sleepless in Seattle. I can't remember. But it was, do anyone remember those movies? Okay, yeah, if you remember it, you're old. Okay, I'm just saying, you're old. But in the movie, one of the protagonists, she's a female, she's sitting in a restaurant, and she's kind of imitating an orgasmic experience. And people are watching her, and the waitress goes to the table next to her after reenacting an orgasmic experience. He goes, well, what can I get you? And she says, I want what she's having. You see, I think one of the problems in Catholicism is that we all don't present, we aren't plating our faith well. And we all need to work on that. That's why groups like the men's group and even opportunities like this is for you not just to sit there and receive, but take it, incarnate it after you digest it, chew on those thoughts, and put these things into practice. Because if not, it's just going to go through you, or it's just going to stay in you, and you are going to be literally constipated with faith. You're literally going to be full of it. And why? Because you're not actually taking it and turning it into something. So I want to get practical. I'll get theological, but I also want to get practical. And I'm just going to admit that this talk that I'm going to give you now came from the fact that I was writing a talk for men's conferences. And I was eating nachos because that's what people do, you know, just to distract it. And so to distract myself, I just started flipping through the channel, and I landed on like an old TBN show, and it was Nacho Libre. Do you remember that? True story of a priest who actually put his faith into practice, put on a mask, and professionally wrestled so that he could raise money to feed orphan boys. Awesome show. Awesome character by Jack Black. Hysterical, because a big fat man wrestling, and there's nothing more pleasant to watch while eating nachos. And so I started flipping through the channel again, and I saw an old video of the Village People. singing Macho, Macho Man. Interesting, because at least the stereotype was that they were macho, but in a different way, right? And so as I'm eating nachos, watching Nacho Libre, and listening to the Village People, I think I have my talk. I want you to be macho, macho man. I want to be a macho man. Sing it with me. Macho, macho. Okay, don't, because if this gets out, people will talk, all right? But here's what I want to do. Take the stuff in the world and baptize it and bring it out as a new creation. So I want you to be macho, which is going to stand for M-A-C-H-O. M is going to stand for Marion. And this is the only way that you're going to be a man, is if you truly are a son of the Father. But it requires you to be born again. Have you heard of this expression? Well, the only way you can be born again is if you're actually born in spirit. That's why Mary is considered the mother, truly, the mother of the living, as John was given to her as a son, and Mary was given to John the Beloved as a new mother. You have to take Mary on as your mom. Some of you might be good Catholics. Some of you might even be Protestants and not understand Mary. And the Catholics that may not truly have Mary in their life, maybe you have no devotion to her, you're missing out. You've got to be more like Jesus. And Jesus was begotten of the Father, but born of the Virgin. The baptismal font is considered the womb where you are born, and the tomb where sin is put to death. And Mary, in her, is where sin was put to death, because she actually said yes to God's will as the new Eve, because the old Eve said no to God's will. So in order for you to truly be a man of God, a saint, every saint will say that you have to have a devotion to the Blessed Mother. She will teach you how to be a gentleman, Mary's little lamb, whose fleece is white as snow. But that Lamb of God wasn't just simply an instrument for slaughter. That Lamb of God went to the descent into hell in order to wage war against sin and death. And that's why one of my favorite images is of a crusader with his sword in his hand, kneeling in front of the statue of the Blessed Mother. You see, Mary isn't just raising you to be a good boy. She's raising you to be a soldier for Christ. And I truly have a devotion to Mary because because I'm Filipino. I have to. But I also studied Mariology when I was in Rome at the seminary. And I remember very clearly my first day of class. This was in the 90s. Yeah, I'm that old as a priest. I've been a priest now for 26 years, and I went to seminary in Rome in the 90s. And this was when laptops were just coming out, man. So it's like I needed to be a good Asian and be up to date with technology. So I had my laptop. And I needed to focus because all of my classes were taught in the Italian language. And I don't know about you, whenever anyone speaks Italian, I get hungry. So I had to focus. So this priest walked in, and I knew that I was going to like this class, because as soon as he walked in, I realized that I was taller than him. So it was just like, and this is what he said, the first class, Maria, which is, okay, bravo, you speak Italian too, molto bene, very good. He goes, Vergine, Madre, and then he stopped and he looked at us and he said, Impossibile. And he walked out. I typed 4 words, and I'm thinking, am I getting my money's worth here, people? But he made us think of these things that we say every Christmas, Virgin and Mother. That is impossible. Do I need to use other finger gestures to prove it to you? But the operative word in all of this is impossible, because it comes from the Latin impotere. Impotence, because God is omnipotent, omnipotere, the ability to do all things, all powerful. God is not impotent. Awkward. I'm just telling you that. You see, if you're going to be the man of God, because Mary even asked, how is it possible? The angel will say, with God, all things are possible. With God, God is not impotent. God can do all things. That's what Mary is trying to remind us of doing. That's why she'll be the first to say, they got no more wine. Servants, listen to him. He can do anything. The problem is, we are in the mentality of being contra the concept. Did you hear that? We contracept God. We put something between us and God's power. And when we do, we are no longer Marian. We're more like Eve. No, I will not listen to you. I will do this because if I eat that forbidden fruit, I will be like God. So, that's why Mary has got to be a part of your spirituality. Do not just let the rosary be something that hangs from your rear view mirror, but put it in your hands. And ready for this? Pray with your family. If you have grandchildren or if you're a young father, pray the rosary with your family. And why? Because when you do that, then you'll be at least exercising the second ingredient for great nacho machos, A. M is Marian, A is active, which is very different from activism and very different from being aggressive. Active means that you're actually imitating the relationship between Jesus the Father and the Holy Spirit. You see, one thing that people don't understand is that the Trinity is active. It's active. It's not static. The reason why we can say three is one is because they are actively in union with each other. But I honestly think that we don't understand the Trinity because we don't even understand how two people can become one. Like marriages. Marriages are supposed to image Trinity. Did you know that? Because marriage is not the union of two people, it's the union of three. Man, woman, and God. Who is the love that keeps your love active? And let's admit that the world presents men as inactive, lazy, couch potatoes. I was thinking potato chips. You can see where I am with food. But that's how people see us. That's how they see us, is like the women will just simply take over. There's no need for the guy to get involved. And therefore, in order for us to prove that we mean something, we get aggressive. And there is something called toxic masculinity. And it's a result of toxic femininity. Men have to be more active like the Trinity. Let me explain. You see, the Trinity is always described not as a math equation. People always ask me, how can three become one and one become three? They ask me because they think I'm Asian and I should be good at math, right? But I say, well, you're getting it all wrong because it's not an equation to be solved. It's a relationship to be understood. Very different. The relationship between Father, Son, and Spirit is described in Greek as perichoretic. Perichoresis. That's the word. And what does that mean? Dance. It's an activity, a dance. Almost like, have you ever seen people ballroom dancing? They look like they're one. We know that they're two, but why? Because they're operating on the same note. They're in sync. Remember that group? If you do, you're old, okay? But they were just in sync. Our activity must be trying to bring about an in-syncness with my family, with my church, with my world. But we're not. We're scattered. Why? Because we're getting tempted from the devil, because he or she, I like to use gender-inclusive language when I talk about the devil, is constantly throwing stuff at us, and we think that we have to be able to handle it all. I'll just give you a perfect example. with this C word of macho man, okay? Because as soon as I said C word, some of you were like, wait, what? So Marion, active, which means in syncness. C, compassion. This is a struggle because the world is telling you, you have to pay attention to everything. Everyone knows that in the past few years, I don't know if this is going to shock some of you, but we've become a very divided nation. Shocking, isn't it? And why? Because the devil is out there trying to get you to take a side. It's literally not putting us in sync with each other, because they're saying that unless you believe what I believe, you are a terrible person. You are not compassionate. And this is a struggle for me because the word simply comes from the Latin verbs patior, which means to suffer, cum, which means with suffering, to be able to suffer with other people. The problem is, I'm going to give you some good news. While you are called to be compassionate, you are physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically incapable of being pure in your compassion. You can't pay attention to everything all the time and get involved, because that will just make you an activist rather than truly being compassionate. So you'll hear people say things like, you should love your neighbor, that's what the Bible says, and therefore you should welcome all. Really? I know that this is going to sound political, but it's trying to be spiritually and theological. I'm sorry. I like to tell those people, you don't even know your neighbor's name. So don't give me this false sense of compassion. That's called virtue signaling. True compassion would be when you actually meet your neighbor, welcome them into your home, help pay their bills. And you can see, well, I can't do all of that, because you're not necessarily called to do that. But who are the people that causes you suffering? And you're going to say, you mean my wife? And my children? That's your focus on compassion. I think our world is sometimes getting us to think about everybody else's problems and not paying attention to the people who are in front of you now. You see, Jesus, only God, is compassionate omnipotence. Only God. Now you're probably thinking, well, how then I make a change and get involved? Well, that's what I'm going to ask you. What causes you suffering? And what do you do to help to relieve the suffering of others? So I'm just going to give you a perfect example. As a priest, everyone thinks as soon as they put this on, that you can do everything. This is a freak magnet. Which is why I don't wear it in airports. Because I fly a lot and I get upgraded. And if I wear this in the front row, and this has happened when I was younger and trying to show that I am proud of my priesthood, and I am. But there was that one time I got upgraded and I had my collar on. This woman walked up to me and she's like saying, priesthood must pay well these days. And my response to her was, I take up a third collection. Now I did, but I don't. It made it very hard to be compassionate with this woman. So what did I do? I found out what seat she was in, and I sent her a vodka and tonic just to shut her up from the front. Such a baller move, wasn't it? But it was hard to be compassionate to someone like that, because as soon as they see this, they think, I am here to solve everyone's problems. And as soon as you say, I am Catholic, then they say to you, well, what do you do to help? Listing all of these problems. And it's basically a logical fallacy. They're setting you up for failure. I'm asking you and challenging you to be compassionate, but to have some flippin' focus in your compassion. Because if all you're going to do is march, that does nothing unless you're at the March for Life. Because that shows our compassion. We let our feet do the talking. We're praying in front of the Supreme Court. And let me tell you, our prayers made a difference with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I'll also tell you that people say that march did nothing and it left the city in a shambles. It's a lie, because I've talked to the police. They say the March for Life is their favorite day because it slows everybody down and we leave the city richer and cleaner. Thank God for the Knights of Columbus who give us those signs and actually pick it up and throw them away. George Soros doesn't do that with his signs. Because it's fake compassion. So I'm not trying to get political. I'm just trying to tell you, people forcing you to be compassionate, it's good. It's good. But ask yourself, how are you actually suffering with other people? Because then you can be called to do something about it. Like for me, I'm a food guy. During COVID, remember that fun? My work is large events and traveling. I was without a job. And I would get bored. And I would just be like watching the news, which is so good for your soul if you want to go to hell, right? By the way, if you watch a half an hour of news, you got to watch a half an hour of EWTN, Sundays at 4:30. All right, so I just remember being so kind of frustrated and bored out of my mind that basically I took all of my problems to prayer, and God said, you're the cooking priest, feed people. So I packed up my car with food and I just delivered it to all of the homeless people, and there were many, simply because they had no one to panhandle to. Remember that? And I remember one guy in particular, he was eating alone. He was sitting alone, and I handed him food, and he said, can you do me a favor? I said, sure. And I thought he was going to ask for money or another bag of food. And I said, what can I do for you? He said, can you just sit here and eat with me? And honestly, I didn't want to, because he smelled like urine. And, you know, smelly clothes and sweat. Being compassionate is harder than it sounds. But can you practice it? Maybe at the end of this conference, you can pick a project and actually do it instead of just making a sign and talking about it and putting up a flag on your For You page, social media posts. I just think that we don't know what the word means because we don't realize that the word compasio means to suffer with. So everybody wants to talk about other people's suffering, but they're not willing to do it. Thank God for our brave military, because they actually were willing to put their lives on the line for the people in Iran who are suffering. And thank God, I just got the news today that Iran basically conceded and decided that they will never create a nuclear bomb. No, and I don't say this for the applause. I say it because our military is not only an instrument of war, but they can also be seen as instruments of compassion. And we need to see that. H. But the problem is, let's admit, some people have presented the military as this machismo, like you gotta be strong and tough and all that stuff. I would never be accepted in the military. But I was sworn in as a captain for the U.S. Air Force. But it was on a condition that I could take my certified officer training a year later because my schedule was so busy. But then paperwork got in the way, and they said, no, you need to take it now. So 3 months after I was sworn in, I was honorably discharged as a captain in the military. My family called me Captain Crunch. That's what they called me. That's fine, because I still serve the military, because I think that our military are such great examples. When they're truly, truly military and see their purpose, they become H, and that's humble. So you want to be holy, you want to be a man of God, then you've got to be humble. It comes from the Aramaic word hummus, which, by the way, is not the it's not the delicious chickpea dish with olive oil, lime, and some za'atar. No, that's called hummus, okay? Hummus just means dirt. And the most humbling experience happened several Wednesdays ago when they took dirt and they smeared it on your face and said, "You're dirt, and to dirt you will return." That's what I appreciate about our military. They're willing to put their lives on the line. A humble person is not just simply someone who is meek and humble and quiet. No, that's just a shy person. A humble person is someone who knows they're going to die. But how will their life be remembered? That's why a humble person practices a very important epitaph, and that is simply the Latin phrase, memento mori. Remember death. Remember you're going to die. Because if you are humble and memento mori, then you can carpe diem, seize the day. See, a humble person does both at the same time. They remember they've got to seize the day, but remember death, which means that you're not going to be an idiot and do something to put yourself in harm's way, but you're going to put yourself in a place where you can do good for others. That's humility. Humility is about remembering that if we are going to die, we're going to face our judge, and they're going to ask you, what did you do with your life? And if it was just simply be a parishioner, then can I tell you something? You are very annoying. You just sit there. And if someone comes in because it's a big mess and they take your seat, you give them a dirty look. Like, that's my seat. Like, I'm sorry, church in that pew was not your place to exercise animal kingdom marking the territory. Stop acting like parishioners and start acting like a pilgrim. Because a pilgrim is humble. A pilgrim in the medieval times meant that they're searching for God. They didn't even know if they would be guaranteed to return home. That's, by the way, why banking took place. They actually, I don't know if you know this, but Catholics were actually responsible for the tourism industry. It was called pilgrimages. And we actually are responsible for the banking system, because pilgrims would actually pay banks along the way. So in case anything happened to them, if they didn't receive that money, they knew that that money would go to their family. Isn't that amazing? Catholics, we are what makes the world great again. I'm just saying. But a pilgrim is someone who is humble enough to know that they're not only going to die, but they seize the day. I'm encouraging you to be a pilgrim with me. Available at platinggrace.com/travel. And why do I do this? Because I want to get you out of your pews and to see the world, to see what the Catholic Church does. Where the Catholics are, we make beautiful shrines from which neighborhoods are established. Celebrations and feast days happen there. Food, commerce, business, culture, life. We sometimes treat our church like it's the be-all, end-all. Now, granted, some of you may never be able to go on a pilgrimage with me. And that's too bad. Because they are very fun and faith-filled. And I'm not pushing this because that's fine if you don't go on a pilgrimage with me. There are many pilgrimage opportunities. But maybe you can be a pilgrim even in your own diocese. I want to congratulate you because you became a pilgrim today. You literally left the comforts of your home just to come here. Good for you. Maybe on a Sunday, take your family and say, we're going on a pilgrimage. We're going to go to the cathedral instead for this Sunday. Just make sure you leave your donation envelopes at your home parish, okay? Just making sure you do that. If there are any priests, parishioners here, you're welcome. But the reality is, go search for your faith. Don't be a parishioner expected to be handed on to you like a silver platter. Fine, maybe you can't travel too much. Maybe you might want to go to a different Mass time. Or worse, sit in a different pew. And why? Because it'll give you perspective. And a pilgrim, a humble pilgrim, has perspective. They realize, check this out, that the world does not evolve around you. Are you seeing why these are ingredients to a true macho? Oh, last is obedient. And a lot of people oftentimes don't understand priests, because we profess upon our ordination that we have to be chaste, we have to exercise some level of poverty. If you're a diocesan priest, a different type of poverty, but I vow poverty. And O is obedience, so chastity, poverty, and obedience. And people honestly think that the hardest vow is chaste celibacy. I mean, at one point it was difficult, but as I get older, it's not an issue. Gentlemen, you know that, right? I mean, I always like to tell couples as they're getting married that please learn how to love each other and not just simply with one body part. Because at one point, his won't work and hers won't want to, okay? I mean, but that doesn't mean you can't love each other. You just have to pay attention to what the other is craving from you. That requires obedience. Do you listen? Do you listen to what your spouse and what your children are hungering for? Or are we like one of those chefs that says, you're going to eat this, no soup for you. Eat what I give you. You guys remember that line? Okay, you're very old, okay? But this is the reality of what obedience is. It's the listening. Now, it comes from the words obendire, which means tending towards that which is said. The problem is there's a lot being said out there. Who's your source? Who's your voice? Jesus requires us to listen to him as a voice of one crying out in the desert. And that requires us to be quiet. You see, in our world, it's hard to be obedient because we don't know who to be obedient to. I mean, right now, I just did a podcast on my podcast called The Father Leo Show on YouTube, and I take the controversial things and try to sift it out to make it a little bit more manageable for Catholics. Right now, Catholics are being tested as to who they want to kind of give allegiance. Do I give it to Trump because I believe that he is fighting for good? And again, I don't know what your political opinions are. I couldn't care less, to be honest with you. Or do I listen to the Pope because the Pope says that Trump... Who am I going to pay attention to? Do you see how obedience is very hard? We're being tempted to obey one or the other. Technically, you can listen to both, but ultimately, you have to listen to God. You know what that requires you to do? Shut the faith up. Just stop talking. I'm upset with some of my priests, brothers, and other influencers who are on social media. They've all become geopolitical experts in everything, commenting about this, that, and the other. And part of me just wants to say, please, can you just, for the love of God, this includes the news. And by the way, this also includes whatever happens at the water cooler. Talk less. Listen more. And I know you're thinking, priest, take your own advice. But guess what? I get paid to talk. Because I actually, before I talk, as Fulton Sheen has done, before you say one word, you pray like an hour before every word that you say. And that's what I do on planes, actually, you know. It's what I do when I'm driving. 6 hours I was in Canada into Montreal, and then I drove to Vermont because I was meeting somebody there. And some of you who are on social media may have actually seen who I met. I met a man named Nisa Powers. And some of you are like, I don't know who that is. Nisa identified as a trans woman. He feels more comfortable in women's clothing and approaching the world through the lens of a feminine. But he also had a girlfriend at the time, and she identified as lesbian. So it made sense because he looks like a woman, but he has the body parts of a man who likes a woman, but she only likes women. I think the Trinity makes more sense than this, right? Okay. Now, why did I meet with them? Because several months ago, Nisa Powers goes on the internet and says, this is day one of becoming a Christian. And since then, Nisa started going to so many different Christian churches, but he found a home in the Catholic Church. And why? Because he felt a presence in the silence. He actually recognized the presence of the Eucharist. By the way, last December, I brought 12 social media content creators who were on the internet saying, I'm Catholic curious. Hey, I'm an evangelical. Hey, by the way, as an evangelical, during the month of October, I'm going to pray the rosary every day as an evangelical. And I'm going to document how I feel and my thoughts. I kept getting all of these feeds on my social media about Catholic curious social media content creators. And I had to ask myself, why, Lord? And God said, I need you to be obedient. Listen to me. They are crying for help. So my organization, look, trust me, I don't have a big organization at all. This is very bare bones. I paid for all of them to come to the first archdiocese in the United States, which is Baltimore, where I lived, very convenient. And I gave them a 3-day pilgrimage for free. That's compassion. It's putting my money where my mouth is, so to speak. And it took great risk. They came because it was a free trip, but it was really an opportunity for me to question them and say, where are you getting your information from about the Catholic faith? Because I can tell you the internet is 1,000% fake news. Artificial intelligence is just basically acquired information. And not all of the acquired information is real. And guess what? They came on this pilgrimage. 5 of them became Catholic as a result of me trying to shepherd them. However, just 2 nights ago, I was in Vermont speaking with Nisa and his girlfriend, now fiancée Charlotte. Struggles with still trying to be a man when he feels so conflicted with someone experiencing gender dysphoria. And I can't tell you, because if you just look him up on social media, you're going to see how many people made comments about it. And you'll see how many people were very supportive. He says the Catholics are the most supportive. He thought that we were going to be the most judgmental. But he says, you're the most supportive. Where he gets the hate from, or from non-Catholic Christians. And it was just simply an evening where I did not as much talking, but more listening. And why do I say that this is a key to your masculinity and how to be a good man? Because men, your wife more than likely talks more than you. I don't know if that's true for your life, right? But how much of what she says do you actually listen to? Because all of her words are really asking for you to be obedient to her. And why? Because she has a right for you to be obedient to her, as you have a right for her to be obedient to you. Because you married each other to be each other's servants. What do you hear when she speaks to you? What do you hear when your children complain to you? Well, let me give you some advice. Obedience requires active listening. And active listening isn't you saying, what I hear you say is, and then you repeat it. That's not actively listening. That's actively annoying, okay? Active listening is, God, what are you telling me? Through the whining of my wife, the complaints of my children, and all of these conflicting social media feeds that I put myself in harm's way when I listen to them. What is God saying to you? Can you see why we got to shut the faith up? Less words, make time for quiet in your own personal life. Make time for silence so that we can hear the voice of God speak to us. And one of the best places to be silent is at a meal. Someone said adoration, which is true. But you're not going to be in adoration every moment of your life. You should adore the Lord at all times and all seasons. And yes, set yourself up for a slot for your parish's adoration hour, but I'm talking about just in the world where you happen to live. The meal is a place where silence occurs. Why? Because you can't talk while your mouth is full. So here's what you do. Feed your wife and your children with amazing food, with recipes found where fine books are sold. And I know that that sounds corny, but it's true. In fact, a gentleman just stopped me and he says, "It's your fault, Father Leo. He was here. I was just right outside." And I said, what was my fault? Because a lot is my fault. He goes, "Because of you, we have Sunday suppers with my family." Isn't that all that what God wants? Isn't that why heaven is considered a heavenly banquet? Can I recommend that you eat together regularly? And you're going to think, well, that's hard to do. I know. That's why I wrote the book, Saving the Family. And the book, Saving the Family, charters the events that your family will go through from basically when you were feeding them mashed peas to when they became toddlers, teenagers, now you're empty nesters, and now they're feeding you mashed peas. And everything in between, with recipes and questions and essays. Then the other book that's out there, I know it's going to make you chuckle. It's called Spicing Up Married Life. And I know you're thinking, dude, you're a priest. What do you know about marriage? Well, I tell you, I know enough. I didn't want to get married, okay? But God and I are on a mission to get rid of anniversaries because honestly, they're stupid. And if there were women here, they'd be like, "I don't like Father Leo," but you guys were like, "Yes, tell me more." They're stupid because I'm speaking Latin, stupor, sleepy, slow. Why do you people wait once a year to celebrate your love for each other? With 12 chapters, you can celebrate month-iversaries, monthly dinner dates. And now the women are like, "Buy that book, honey," right? And it's true, because if you are not actively showing your children that marriage takes work, then they're going to assume that it comes easy. That's the Trinitarian in syncness, your activity. And is it hard work to make time to eat with your spouse? Admit it, it is hard work, especially if she can't cook well, or if she's messy and you've got to wash the dishes. But this is the word is liturgy. That's a Greek word that means work. The meal is your primary work, to feed one another and to experience the fact that God wants to give you something amazing. He wants to give you his peace, which just happens to taste like nachos and dip. No, I'm kidding. So I wanted to just bring this to you guys. I know a lot of men's conferences are all about witnessing and sharing faith. I don't have much to witness, to be honest with you, because I don't have your experiences. I'm not married. I've been a priest 26 years. I have a restaurant and a food truck that hires people coming out of the prison system, which is terribly difficult work. And I'm working with people who barely can communicate cohesive thought. And I've got to be so patient with them, which is, by the way, the same root word as passion. Long suffering is patience. And there was one of my employees, he said to me, hey, Father, actually, he calls me chef, because some of them say they don't know what a father is. So hey, chef, can I play my music? And I said, does your music have the N word, the B word, and references to prostitution? And he goes, never mind. But I have to be willing to listen to what he wants. And I remember taking one of my team members out to a vineyard in the western part of Maryland. There's a vineyard out there owned by a Catholic family. He had never seen so much green because he lives in the city. And we get to this place, which is a beautiful kind of chateau-looking thing with the vineyards, and you could see the transformation that occurred in him because of the silence. And he just felt at peace. I think what we've got to do is just remember that there are many things you're going to get out of these conferences. But hopefully you have ingredients that you can put together and create for yourself a feast on how to be a man. Because you can only give to your children what you yourself have received. So at the end of this conference, I'm going to be back out there, and I know that we're going to be preparing for Mass, and we're going to be ending exactly on time here, because while I am Filipino, I was trained by Germans. And I kind of just want to end with how I did one of the most manly things I've ever done in my life. And that was I beat Bobby Flay. And a lot of people, you heard, how did you beat? I said that I cheated. I technically didn't cheat. What happened was they brought out the judges who were sequestered. They didn't know whose plate was whose. They brought out mine, which was plate A, and Bobby's, which was plate B. And by the way, Bobby had 3 professional chefs helping him. I had a priest wearing a do-rag helping me. That's all I had. They tasted plate A, mine, and they said it was amazing. They said that the flavors blended so perfectly and that the meat melted in their mouth. I'm just saying what they said about A, okay? Then they tasted Bobby's. They said, it was good. It was amazing. He's an Iron Chef. How did I beat him? Well, during the judging, I whipped out my rosary and I started to pray it. The priest pulled out his rosary, started to pray it. Catholics in the crowd, rosaries, started to pray it. My mom and dad had one in each hand. They were double fisting. They were like, I even think there was a Muslim guy in the crowd, and he pulled out his beads and he's like, ah, la, 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 la. And you know what? I will take that prayer. And why? Because if you are praying to the one true God, it leads to victory without violence. It leads to you feeding one another. You're not going to put a bomb on you and blow people up in the name of God and be called a martyr. No, you're not a martyr. You're a murderer. A martyr is someone who is willing to die so that you can live. A martyr in their eyes is someone who will die and take out as many people with him as possible. Difference. So you're not going to put a bomb on you and blow people up. You're going to put an apron on you, which I sell. And mine are black and therefore slimming, all right? And you're not going to blow anybody up. You are going to feed them, and then they blow up, but in the good way, blow up. You see, my whole job here today was to try to feed you for what you are hungering, which is how to be holy, how to be a man of God. Ready for this? How to be a macho man. Who wants to be a macho? You guys sound terrible. But can I tell you what you really sound like? Men of God, sons of the Father, brother to the Lord's family, a soldier for Christ, a saint in the making. Thank you.